Department cluster, as they've been titled, and I realize I did that titling. So
You titled it, yeah.
that's totally on me. A lot of the departments in the Public Works cluster are the departments that have been, I guess, moved around through the realignment and reorganization process. So I think that as far as budgets go, I'll probably be the one answering most of the budgetary questions about where they came from and where they moved to. If you have any detailed questions about the actual work being done in the departments, obviously like they are around the room to be able to answer those as needed.
So good, this will be the maiden voyage of us addressing the newly arranged satellites in the Public Works
In the galaxy, yeah.
cluster. Great. Public Works.
I like going with the theme. I like that.
Hang on one second, let me grab my budget book.
Seemed like Monday to you guys too. Yeah. I'm glad it's not,
Because it's Tuesday.
because it's Tuesday.
A lady out in your district had a problem with the recycling.
Yeah. You took
What
care of
page
it.
we starting on?
I mean, I didn't say,
So Public Works starts on
my
page
wife thought you might
133.
get your feelings hurt.
No, Lord, no. That's one less thing.
Page 133, and then I will tell you what Public Works kind of entails. So, previously, under the Infrastructure and Public Services model, there were different working divisional areas that we termed infrastructure, and then another one that we termed, obviously, environmental services. Within infrastructure, there was the, general operating area, traffic, streets and drainage. There's also right-of-way and landscaping work. So all of that kind of encompassed infrastructure. And then environmental services kind of sat separate from that. In this new conglomeration, the idea of infrastructure is still there, minus the right-of-way and landscaping piece, but then plus the environmental services piece. So you'll be able to kind of, and then also plus the fleet services piece. You'll kind of see that in like their divisional breakdown. Obviously there is the administrative level, there is which houses a lot of the leadership in their salaries and benefits. There's the environmental services division that we just mentioned. So environmental services is what you've always known environmental services to be. That is garbage and trash pickup, recycling pickup and processing, things of that nature.
Wait, you said page 133?
Yes, sir.
Got the wrong book.
That would be of the 2023.
Yes, sir. Out of the fiscal year 2023 budget proposal.
That's not good.
That's okay, it's only 2 years old.
That's not a good start.
I'm glad it was Lee. So now if we do something, it doesn't
You
matter.
get a get out of jail free card.
I always did poorly in math, but my history was. All right.
That's a good one.
That must be.
Yeah.
So then continuing on, after environmental services, you will see the division of fleet services, and so that really is encompassing the idea of our fleet maintenance. Really everything except for police. Oh, it's weird. So fleet services is about the maintaining and bettering of our fleet. That is going to be, all the trucks that are in service, the big heavy equipment. Mr. Fail, you're not helping me out here.
Well, fleet services is about servicing fleets. I mean, that's a great definition.
Sure. So, but the divisions that they help are going to be everything sans the police department right now.
Yeah.
Obviously, fire also has large pieces of their fleet that fleet services does impact. Although I will say that I think that there is going to be there is a little bit of a move for fire to be able to do a little bit of their own servicing too. So that's not necessarily wholly impacting of fire.
So fleet services is mainly environmental services, trucks.
It's going to be a large piece of it, but it's not really solely. So obviously there's going to be in environmental services. There's also going to be water and sewer fleet is in there as well. There's going to be planning, zoning, and then the building inspections fleet that's in there. And then there's, there's just the general myriad of other, like cars, vehicles that we have around the city that are kind of like one-offs here and there.
So, Ms. Standridge, why don't, let's let the head of Public Works.
So that's why I'm kind of standing here, is because we
Okay.
don't have a head of public works right now. That is, that job is currently listed and posted on the,
Do we have a deputy head of Public Works?
we have a prior head of infrastructure from IPS that I think might be able to answer a little bit more of the information from the department operational level that you might be looking for. That's going to be Selvin Green.
Okay.
So Selvin, I'm going to invite you to come up. And
So as my fellow council members, you ready? Because what I want to know is, you ready? Who is in charge? All right, Selvin.
That man right there.
Oh, I'm not.
Oh, he's not in charge. Okay.
So,
All right.
If you're looking for somebody in charge, I need
Come
to.
stand here.
Well, I mean, not to be facetious at this point, but that public works section is currently organized, correct? I know we just approved it last week, but it's been, I think, in the works for some time moving towards that.
The initial goal was to reclassify the IPS manager director into the public works director. LaShonda had felt that we needed, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that we needed to post the position instead of reclassify under the city code. So the position is being posted currently. We will also have to post the water and sewer position as well, and the facilities, buildings and grounds. I'm sorry, I don't have my notes in front of me.
That's
so
okay.
off the top of my head. So that will be posted. And then the position that will be basically, the only one that will be reclassified at this point would be OCE, which is the city engineer. And LaShonda, please correct me.
So, from a functional provisional standpoint, who's,
Selvin.
okay.
Who's in charge?
I'm the stand-in at this point.
But I've been calling you since day one.
Well, me too, so.
All right.
And so I think that in getting the operations done, he is the one that is in charge of getting the operations of the area done. However, I do think that it's not necessarily, if he doesn't understand a question about how some costs were before and how they have been realigned into the budget that's being presented to you today, that's why I'm kind of standing here to be able to answer those
Yeah,
questions.
so Carly, from that big financial rock piece, just kind of in summation of what you just talked about, as we look at from 21 to 22, where that was these numbers, 23,190,000, 24,804.
Yes, sir.
How have you come up with those?
So
I mean, because it didn't exist as an entity.
Sure.
So I'm assuming you and your team had to
cost out
to
the different.
synthetically construct it for comparative purposes,
That's
right?
correct. Yes, that's correct. And so, in costing out what the functionality of environmental services, fleet services, traffic, what all of those actually costed under the old system and being able to move them into the new system, that's really kind of what we did. Now, a large piece of that obviously is going to be on a person-by-person basis because the biggest cost really is going to be your salaries and benefits. So depending on where one person sat before versus where that person sits now, that cost moved with that person. So that's a very easy way to cost out as far as the personnel goes. As far as what the actual other pieces of the activity, the contracts that they will issue for their operational piece, any of the like repairs and supplies that they would need to buy inventory that go into their operations, things of that nature. We did have to cost out almost on a line item by line item basis to make sure that they moved appropriately.
And so on the administration component of the public works, is that an entirely internally constructed administration, or are we cost assigning some portion of other administrative functions in the city to it?
No, so that's totally internal.
That's purely internal
Yes, sir.
administration.
So just, I don't know if this is a good, but where did the $10 million decrease go?
So, and now I'm gonna add an extra layer of fuzziness into there. Previously, and I'm gonna apologize for that, it was definitely, I think that we tried to make it better this time around. Previously, under the administrative function, every single person's salary that worked in any way under the infrastructure piece, whether that was in traffic, whether that was in streets and drainage, they all sat in the administrative section. They did not sit with their costing division. So that's why we have to say that one person, literally we moved one person from one area to their actual operating area. So we probably moved a good 250, 300 people from the administrative section of infrastructure into either fleet services, traffic, streets and drainage, things like that. So you will see 10.9 million coming out of administration. That's going to be all of the people moving into their different divisions, plus right-of-way and landscaping moving out completely and in totality. So that's where that that negative 10.9 million comes from on that administrative line. But you'll see 800,000 moving into environmental services. You'll see 2.2 million moving into traffic. You'll see 3.2 million moving into fleet. That's because they came out of that administration level and into their costing division. Like I said, adds a little layer of fuzziness, and I know that. What that means at the end of the day is that traffic division is the full cost accounting of the traffic division
We
within
have
this
somebody from
department.
traffic here.
I
Selden's over
represent
traffic.
I represent traffic.
I just text somebody to call you about something.
Okay, I'll handle it.
No.
What all do we have in there, Sel?
So in traffic, our traffic group handles, right now, they handle all of
Hey,
our.
Sullivan, I do think that they're asking you to come to the microphone.
And they're gonna be mad at me when I leave out something that they do.
Right, I just want to, is
But
this
they
an
handle, all-
engineer sitting somewhere? with
Yeah,
a
that's Tim
computer, or is
Bunger.
it- What all does it consist of?
Tim Bunger, I think many of you have met him. Tim is our traffic engineer. His group handles all of our traffic operations, signal maintenance, and facilitate now some of the time and stuff through engineering, since that support staff and engineering isn't there at the moment. That group also handles all of our fiber infrastructure repair. Fiber, yes, they handle all of our fiber infrastructure repair. They also handle, to some extent, new fiber requests that we get in.
So this would be fiber like communications networks?
Correct.
And that's in traffic?
That's under our traffic group.
Why is that?
It's just historically been there. The guy that sort of, when the city got into traffic infrastructure, that was probably 22 years ago when those first message signs went up around the city. At that time, there was one guy in the TDOT department, Chris Golden, who took it upon himself to understand, learn, and know all things there was city fiber-wise, and it had rested in that area ever since.
So it's fiber optics for traffic?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's how, much of our communication infrastructure for fiber is for signal interconnect. And there are some other components that we do use the fiber for, but that was kind of the genesis of it.
So they don't do the fiber optics for the free Wi-Fi? Or
So,
Wi-Fi?
so some of that runs over the infrastructure that I'm gonna say TDOT handles, but others of it is separate too from what IT does. So there's a collaboration between the two groups and how that comes to a holistic picture.
All right. Else have any other questions?
I've just got a couple of questions. I guess when I look at some of this stuff and we look at unfunded initiatives and unfunded equipment. Hey, I'm assuming, and Selvin, or Carly, the capital outlay, is that where we are buying equipment, Carly, or where is the equipment or things that we are funding this year?
So,
Where is that?
okay, so two answers to your question. The capital outlay, sometimes yes is equipment, sometimes it's not. Depending on how we capitalize and our capitalization threshold, that's what goes into that capital outlay item. So there are certain repairs, repair supplies that we will buy that is over that capitalization threshold. For example, we just talked about the traffic division. So those large signal heads, the red, yellow, green traffic signal heads, those are gonna be over our capitalization threshold, but yet those are a repair supply item. Those will go in capital outlay. That's not necessarily a piece of equipment that came from an unfunded initiative, but that is going to be something that goes into our capital outlay item. If you would like to see the total amount of unfunded, are you wanting to see the unfunded equipment or
I'm just curious, this is a huge list of unfunded equipment. So I'm thinking, so we're not buying this equipment, so what are we doing?
what are we
just-
buying? Okay.
Yeah, what are we buying, or
Ten-
when do we start moving toward funding some of this equipment, or is that in here somewhere?
So,
Carla, we have two tabs for that. What page are you on?
I'm on page 134. I'm assuming
Every-
there's
yes.
unfunded initiatives,
every,
of
de-
traffic initiatives, looks like of $239,000, but then there's unfunded equipment of $3.7 million.
every department, when they submit their budget request, is going to submit not just their regular operating budget, but also any unfunded amounts that they need. That's going to include any equipment that you'll see on those pages. It'll also include any personnel that they need that's over and above what they currently are budgeted for. And so that's where those unfunded lists come from. We then will have departmental budget hearings where we will then discuss all of the items that they have listed in their unfunded requests. And some of those items do get funded. So I'm about to point you to where we will list the items that are getting funded. If you'll turn to page 17 of the book, these will detail out your capital expenditures. We kind of group them in different ways. One of them is by revenue source, the other one is by equipment type. And so you can kind of see on that equipment type, kind of the lower half on page 17, and then it runs over into page 18. That will show you all of the equipment that was from those unfunded requests that we were able to get in based on priority level.
So some of the stuff that is listed here is actually being funded here, or are these
No, sir.
being funded, and this is just what's left that
This is
wasn't
just what,
funded?
correct. This is just what's left but wasn't funded. So those unfunded lists, back when we first asked the departments to submit to us, were much, much bigger. They were about, 3.9 million, which is the total of this equipment list, about 3.9 million bigger across the different city general fund departments than it currently is in this book right now. What is listed in each department as unfunded still remains unfunded.
Do we have a time, and you may have already said this, before we adopt the budget, that department heads will have a chance to tell us, okay, this was, if you had one thing that you could add to your funding list, would you tell us, plead your case
That should be what is happening now.
That
with
time
the,
is
now?
now.
But this isn't that list.
This is one.
This isn't that list from them, from those department heads. So
everything that they requested for them to be able to operate
On
is,
the
should be in
unfunded?
those lists,
Okay.
yes,
I think
ma'am.
we've done that before, and Mayor may have been on the council with me at that time too, when I know Mayor DuPont didn't like it at all, but we asked, that's what we asked, we'd like to see what, because we're seeing more now than we did then, I think you'll agree. But there was a time when the council asked, say, well, what we really would like to see now is what we're not seeing. Why, what's not being funded. And then we'd have each department have their chance to plead their case about a piece of equipment or two pieces of equipment or an employee, and the council could, yay or nay. So that's now.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Selwyn, do you have anything that you would like to put to that comment?
So, So, yes, so just in general, in terms of that discussion of what's the one thing that we would like to add to that list or whatever, we had that arm wrestling fight, with the mayor, maybe a month or so ago. And we appreciated the opportunity that he gave us to make that case for any additional equipment. And to the extent that the budget would allow, those things that we fought for were put back in or tried to accommodate in some type of way. For the rest of the items that show up, at least under those, under my preview, we have gotten together as a management staff on our end and worked out what we consider to be a decent plan B for all of the other equipment items that show up on our unfunded list. That doesn't ensure us that we won't have some hiccups through the year, but at least we have a game plan in place now as best we can to try and prepare for those unforeseen items that do show up on our list.
And I would just like to say, one, just from a process, just to educate council and maybe any public from a process standpoint, the departments will submit their budgets and their unfunded requests. And please say something if I'm speaking incorrectly, but one thing that every single department that was every single general fund department that was requesting equipment, they all got together separately and determined a priority list amongst themselves. So it was all leadership of those different working divisions and working departments at the table, really kind of duking it out at their own table to determine what a priority list of spending would be. They then all came together and submitted that priority listing to both the budget team and the mayor, and that's how we determined what was actually funded on that page 17 that you saw. So while I do think that, you know, that question is definitely a valuable question to ask every department, I do think that we have gone through the steps as a staff previous to now to all work together to know that there's a limited pot of funding. How best can we allocate that funding to the departments that are in need, so that we can come up with the best list possible, and really working together with the people that we have to see day to day to get those things done.
As one councilman, I would like to see that though, you know, because like I said, there was some things that we found over the years and not recently that we'd put them on a whiteboard, say, okay, here's possible additions, and maybe one might make it, maybe none made it, or maybe all made it. You know, it's good to know that, because that's not how it was always done, which I always thought was not the best way to do it. It was just like really the department heads at that time didn't really have a choice. You know, and because we never saw what was not funded. We just saw what was recommended.
Sure.
By the mayor at that time. And you know, God bless him, he was my Little League baseball coach. He was 9 years old, but Mayor DuPont, and one thing he didn't like that very much, is that we would bring department heads in to plead their case.
Oh, absolutely, and that's why they are here, and that's why we had all the department heads kind of come last Tuesday, and then this Tuesday, and then also next Tuesday, obviously for you to ask any questions that you need.
Yeah.
So how would you like to see it, Mr. Snyder? Do you want it in the form of a data call in writing, or do you want an additional component in this forum, although
Well, you
we have
know,
very few?
I would still, not that it may be moot, but I would still, if there's still something that somebody they duked it out and lost, if there's something they still feel very passionate about, I think I would like them to feel comfortable to come before the council, since, you know, not to be arrogant at all, but that's where this decision's made. So,
We're responsible, is what you're saying.
yes. Well,
So all I'm trying to understand is, how do you want to do it?
well, I guess we're doing it now, but I should have brought this up a couple weeks ago.
Well, luckily, I do think that the departments that we had last week were more administrative, so hopefully less equipment that would have been
Yeah.
discussed. So
That
your
was
heavy,
main-
your
that
heavy
was-
equipment one is today and then next week.
That was primarily what it was, and I think, like I said, Mayor Maddox may remember that too. It was there was mostly equipment, and it just kind of, we never did realize that all we were getting was strictly the recommendations.
Sure. Sure.
And that's all we got.
The unfunded initiatives is an attempt to do that, but however, y'all would like to have the team members come in. And, you know, if you even like me not to be here, just so
No, I'm
they feel-
not mad at all. No, because you've been open to that, and, you know, I'm not saying it's because you're here, but, you know, that, it was,
My question is,
it's
I'm
overlooked.
certain, look, I'm not gonna sit here and be naive. I'm certain there are things that are not in their budgets they wish I would have recommended.
Yeah, of course, that's what I'm saying, you know,
So,
that's,
and you deserve to know what that is, and I think it's a good thing.
yeah.
well, my question is more about process. I mean, why, I'm just curious, because I don't think we got in this discussion last year. I mean, the other thing is, for example, we've got these unfunded traffic initiatives. So where are the ones that we are funding under traffic? I'm looking at the traffic, Public Works, I mean, because I'm sure we're funding some
Yes,
initiatives.
sir.
Where are they?
So they would be funded within their line items, which
They're
that's.
encompassed
In
in
what,
their sections on page 133.
like
on-
on 139?
So for example, if the traffic increase in repairs and supplies, that 56,937, if that were to be funded, that would be encompassed in the repairs and supplies line item on page 139.
The 299, 738, whatever.
Yes, sir. So I hate to say this, but you know, so the question is, if he had a specific unfunded request that was like that one that was awarded, it would be buried
In that
somewhere,
bucket,
somewhere
in that
in
bucket.
these buckets. Yes, sir. If
But
it's not
it would
specific.
fall under repairs and supplies.
Yes, sir.
Same question, we've got streets and drainage. I'm curious about, when I look at this, this is probably not where the neighborhood drainage numbers are, but show me where, is that under repairs and supplies? I mean, what is
So a neighborhood.
what is actually in the streets and drainage?
So our streets and drainage stuff covers those items for drainage issues that we can handle under a maintenance scenario. We do interface with engineering for some design work that they do for us to do repair work. But usually if we are replacing pipe in kind, replacing curb and gutter as is, cleaning ditches, rocking ditches for erosion control, we can handle that stuff based on as-is grade on the ground. So we don't need a whole lot of support from engineering to make those kind of things happen.
That's what this is,
That's what shows up in your streets and drainage.
under like repairs and
Under
supplies.
repair and supplies. So just if I could comment on a couple of other things from, on Councilor Tyner's comment, from my end, and I'm not trying to speak for any of the other individuals, but I can just say from my end, there isn't anything else I would be fighting for over what we already have in our funded list. The unfunded items that we have are certainly things that we would like to see funded, but I would not eliminate anything from our end to pick up those items. So now if you all came to the table and said, hey, Selvin, you've got another $200,000 to spend that we took from engineering, I'll take it and I can prioritize that based on some things we would do. But to just come to you and say, I think this is a huge oversight and we need to do something about this, that's a discussion that we've already had with the mayor from our end, and I'm content with the direction that we've gotten from that.
Just swapping out, are all the message boards under traffic?
Portable or?
Portable.
The portable ones, most of the portable ones you see are under traffic. And I say this generically because the speed limit message boards that we sometimes use, those actually fall under TPD right now.
Okay.
And they've been real good to just kind of let us use those as we need to.
I get calls from time to time, I wasn't sure. where they were.
Yes. Yes.
So, Selvin, so from our funded and unfunded list, you're saying that we have took care of the priorities. Are you confident that we have most
I'm confident, given the budget that we had to work with. So if you were to tell me that I've got more money to work with, then I can certainly go back to the drawing board and say, here are some added things that we would need to put in there. But in terms of red flag items that I would say, this falls under an unfunded initiative, and I think it is something that we absolutely need to have on the table. Those discussions we have had, and I'm confident that we've satisfied those kind of red flag issues. From my end, I won't try and speak for anybody else.
So Selvin, back on the page 133, for each of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 subsets of public works, admin, environmental services, fleet services, traffic, and streets and drainage, is there currently an acting, do each of these have a person serving as, I don't know what you would call it, section heads?
Me,
But somebody's over environmental
But you're,
services.
so.
Jennifer's over
we-
environmental services,
Jennifer and
right?
I, yes,
Oh, okay.
So who's over fleet services,
that's John Smith,
okay? And traffic is Tim Bunger,
yes,
and streets and drainage,
Ronnie Hatfield.
Ronnie Hatfield. And this may be a Carly question, but as we jump in the budget, Carly, on the streets and drainage from, $750,000, $500,000 to 3.8 for a 589% increase. That is the result of the,
Those are,
the what?
those are employees. Those are employees moving from the administrative section into their operating section.
And that $3.7 million for the 23 budget.
Yes, sir.
And let's, on streets and drainage.
Mhm.
So what page is that on over here, page 140?
Yes, sir.
So that's the cost of the department, right?
Yes, sir.
And within the department, we've talked about repairs and supplies, and Selvin's outlined how there's a certain amount of that they sort of expect and do. But for example, the drainage projects, I know we got a piece from Wendy in the last couple of days, and it was
Yep.
briefed to us, I think, last week. Where does that money show?
So the neighbor, you're talking about neighborhood drainage, like the
Right.
ones that, yes, that Miss Shelby pushed out as far as like their listing
I'm
of their
sorry, I
projects.
feel like that's an incredibly elementary question.
No, absolutely
I'm
not at all.
quite sure where it is.
So, in that same section that I kind of mentioned before, so that starts on page, 17, the capital expenditures.
Right?
So we're just gonna, so it's that same section, but we're gonna flip to page 21, and that will show you a specific breakdown between like the citywide resurfacing, that we have, and then also the neighborhood drainage, kind of like all coupled together, all the different types of revenue sources that we have put together to be able to make this like conglomeration of a project. So under the citywide neighborhood drainage, you will see that we have a certain amount listed in our 2019 A debt, so the remaining funds that we have. We set aside a piece of the general fund RFFI, specifically for neighborhood drainage, and then we also have a subsect of the general fund RFFI for CMP, that corrugated metal pipe lining project as well. So that is the total, that last
So-
little table.
Total budget for the 2022 citywide neighborhood drainage.
Yes, sir.
I'm not in the,
Oh,
where's the 23?
sorry, that should be 23.
Okay. Uh-huh. So I'm not the only one who's confused 22 and 23.
You got that other budget.
Leave it to the
Touche.
lead to point that out.
So is it, is
Let's
this,
break out
Where's my get out of jail free card? I thought I had one.
is this
Right?
You got one.
so assuming the correction on the year, then is page 21 a useful oversimplification that there's 860 grand in 23 for neighborhood drainage and 3.43 million for resurfacing. Is
In
that
specific 23 set-asides, yes, that is
set aside?
correct.
Okay, and
I will
that,
say there was a fiscal 22 set aside,
check.
and so that will be a little additional. I don't know if you remember, but there were a couple of savings that we had here and there throughout the year that we kind of threw those savings into the neighborhood drainage. Those still exist. This is just on top of that. So these are what we are proposing for 23 to award to throw into the idea of neighborhood drainage.
Was there more for the resurfacing like that?
Yes, sir. We've had resurfacing plans for, gosh, Wendy, how many years? 2018, 19, 20, 21. And whenever we kind of get done with whenever we get done with the fiscal 22 resurfacing, whatever's left over, we'll throw into the 23 resurfacing in addition with this 3.4 million that we've talked about.
When will we know what that is?
Whenever those contracts are
Yeah,
finished.
When we complete the resurfacing project about.
Good answer.
Carly, I think Wendy, when we met the other day on the drainage projects, what is in the current budget, pretty much that money is gonna be spent.
That's
So
right. I
there's
think
not gonna
when-
be any holdover, because I think we've got
Not-
plenty of
not unless
projects to
we've-
eat that up.
Not unless we've overestimated construction.
Yeah, because Carly's right, I mean, there's still money in the bucket, but I think that money's going to be spent, based on our meeting this last week. Yeah, so that whatever rolls over is already basically spoken for,
It's already put towards paving
Yes.
or towards
or
neighborhood
toward
drainage.
neighborhood drainage.
We just make sure that we kind of keep putting it, we just kind of keep tacking on. Each year we'll put in more.
But I
And then
guess,
whatever's left over, we keep on rolling.
but I guess whatever's left over rolls, but I guess what I'm trying to say is I think whatever rolls is already spent. So it may be coming out of 23 when the bill comes, but I don't think, I think there's not any extra money in there other than what we're talking about right here.
Yes, sir.
Next year.
Yes.
Next year,
correct.
whatever's in there is going to be spent, even if that number ends up being 1.3 or
You
4
are
million dollars
correct.
or whatever it is. Because I know that there's several, I can't remember that number, Wendy and Mike, we looked at, what's still sitting there, it was 4, it's more than 4, how much?
Actually, we only have about 140,000
Left.
left
Left.
right now.
Okay,
And we had and in that presentation, we kind of gave y'all some ideas of what we could actually use that money for. So we could really say we've already spent that money too.
right.
Raven, did you have a question?
Yeah, Raven, sorry.
I did. Wendy, have you given us an updated list on where we are with the resurfacing now? Like what's already been paid or completed?
Now, I haven't given you an updated one, but we're working through closing out local streets now and starting up citywide.
Okay.
Wendy, question I was gonna ask you tomorrow when we meet is, but it's best to do it now. When,
Hey, Wendy.
probably get more street light requests maybe than ever before. Not only going to the LED, but adding. As we're nearing the end of this budget, is there plenty, I mean, do we need to add, do you look at the need to add, money for lights? Or did this year come out about the way you expected it to?
I think we have money left over in our lighting budget. I don't know what that number is, but we do have money left over.
And with the, like you said, Carly, would that roll over?
Yes, sir, absolutely. So the lighting that we have, it would be in one of the capital funds.
I used to hate it when it get
Sorry.
toward the end, they say, well, we don't have any left.
We do have a set aside for street lighting, so whenever some of these requests come in, that's what they will use to prioritize those projects. It's just not in the general fund operating budget, it's one of the capital fund budgets.
Did have two, right? Don't we have one that comes, public safety recommendation on the street lighting?
No, sir, they all get paid out of one pot, one of the line items in the capital fund pots. The public safety one, we do have red light running cameras.
No, for street lights.
I believe it was just
We went
prioritized.
back a year or two ago, and we allocated a certain amount of funding in streetlights that could be acted upon, I think, simply with the chief of police and mayor recommendation as a
Now-
urgent safety issue.
Now, that's a process.
That's
So-
the problem, but the money's all in the
all on
same,
one.
okay.
Yes, sir.
We got a list the other day, and I appreciate it, about drainage.
Drainage, yes, sir.
Could we see something similar to that on like streetlight requests, or where we are, or what have been done?
We have that list, and if y'all would like to see
I'd
that,
like
we
to
can get
see
that
it.
out to y'all.
Yes.
That's the current lighting request that we have now.
Okay.
We can get that.
And Wendy, did I cut you off?
No, I'm finished, thanks.
Wendy, thank you for that list on the drainage. I do have some questions, but we don't have to ask them today. We can just stick with the budget. But I do have some questions about that
Okay.
list.
And I do have one more question for LaShonda. I guess it is the crew workers and all that, you know, they had the fair for,
Yes, sir.
because, and it's a good problem. The parks and all are growing and but so is the amount of work that's being done on rights of way. They did Alberta this week. It made me think of it. They did a great job, by the way. And it'd been a while since they'd been there, but it's because I know there was a shortage of, you know, being able to hire crew workers. How are we on that?
Yes, sir, the last two career fairs have been very successful. I talked to Sylvan actually, because I said we actually have a good problem now, because we've been able to fill so many positions.
That is a good problem.
So, we're actually at a really good place, and Sylvan, you can jump in. So as far as the schedule of them getting caught back up, Sylvan may be able to answer that more, so.
Yeah, that's going to be a work-through process. We are certainly excited about where we sit with our ability to bring on new staff. We're not fully staffed yet, but we are very close to that point, a lot closer than we thought we would be at this time. And the career fair, 2 opportunities from that has definitely been a help in that.
Well, that is good, because I mean, I was so happy to see them out there, and they did a great job, but it's, you know, that because of the shortage,
Yeah.
it hasn't been as
As you would
regular.
expect, with so many new employees coming on, there's still a learning curve that we'll have to work our way over before you really start to see the production out of having these extra people on board. So
Gotcha.
we're making that stride. If I could back up to one question from Councilor Crowe to add some clarification to it. You are looking at the unfunded initiatives versus what's funded, and your observation as it relates to traffic and unfunded and not necessarily seeing traffic carry over into the funded. The reason for that is and again, I can only speak holistically for the group that I'm working with, we still prioritize those efforts based on a work unit as a whole. So we did not allow each section to decide that they're gonna have 3 or 4 top priorities and we're gonna fund their top priority type of things. Everybody's priorities had to compete against everybody else's priorities. And unfortunately, traffic's priorities just weren't as strong to make some of the funded cuts. That is actually a good thing, because that's a testament to the type of skills and maintenance activities that our crews do on a regular basis in that group. So a lot of the things that they find themselves wanting for do fall more toward, and I don't want to be too often about what, but it falls more to we'd like to have this than we need to have this, as compared to other divisions in that work unit. So you won't necessarily see that one-to-one.
Selvin, what's an example of outside services for streets and drainage?
Streets and drainage, a couple of things will fall into that. Sometimes we will have contract work for our bridge inspection, and I say sometimes, we actually do that once a year. That falls in our outside services for streets and drainage. We also bring in heavy equipment sometimes that we don't have in-house because we use it very rarely. And if we bring in a contractor with an operator, not just a piece of equipment, then that will fall under our outside services. And I lean a lot more now to legal for our direction on that, because they are the ones who now help us make that call between what actually requires a contract versus what we can just sign off on as a maintenance activity. So in discussions and collaborations with Sarah, she kind of advises us more on a case-by-case basis as to when something qualifies for an outside service or not, based on the scope of work that we're using.
All right. Any other questions on public works before we move on to facilities and construction?
Thank you.
Delvin, thank you. Construction, facilities and grounds?
So the general, questions that were brought up previously, they will also be the same here. Construction, facilities and grounds is really going to be the, conglomeration, I'll use that term again, of the old logistics and asset management division.
What page are we on?
I'm sorry, that starts on page 71.
71?
71, yes, sir. So this is the old logistics and asset management group plus the right-of-way and landscaping division that moved out of infrastructure. So what constitutes construction, facilities, and grounds? So you can see kind of at the top, there's the three main divisions. One is the administration section, which again is just going to be that those leadership salaries and a couple of, possibly books, dues, and subscriptions and office supplies. And then you'll have facilities maintenance that encompasses the, all of the activity to maintain our facilities. And then you'll have the right-of-way and landscaping section. And so the general increase of 4.8 million from fiscal 22 to fiscal 23 is really going to be that right-of-way landscaping division moving in. As you can tell, that right-of-way landscaping division was really the bulk of all of that.
And do we have an acting department head of construction, facilities, and grounds?
Craig Thorpe.
Beg your pardon?
Craig Thorpe.
Hey, Craig, come on up.
Yes, sir.
So you're broken into, number one, administration.
Yes, sir.
Number two, facilities maintenance. And number three, right-of-way and landscaping. Walk me through, and Carly was touching on it, as the right-of-way and landscaping, as we jump from $1 million, $1.1 million, 5.8 million, how much of that is the addition of former departments, and how much is increase in what work has been done?
So, and yes, and I'm, obviously Craig can answer, any other detailed questions, but the amount that's adding, if you will turn to page 76, you'll kind of see like that right-of-way landscaping division in its detail. And so this is why I kind of say that you'll see in, fiscal 21's revised budget, fiscal 22's revised budget, those are zeros. And so at the top that handles salaries and benefits. And you'll see the addition of fiscal 23 with the salaries and benefits. Those are just being moved out of the administration line of what we now call public works and into this operating division now.
All right. Chris, right?
Craig.
Craig, I'm sorry. Craig, looking out at 23, I'm gonna presume that absorbing and digesting the reorganization is one of the big tasks.
Yes.
So, what else is on your plate for 23 that keeps you up at night?
I would mainly say, like Selvin touched on with the
job fair, filling of the positions, we got a lot of groups in that division that's been, that's had vacancies for a long time, shorthanded, especially on the grass cutting side, so we're, working hard to get those, filled. The parks crew that's been open for the majority of the year, we've hired a supervisor now, and I think with LaShonda's help in the job fair, I think we have the other 3 positions filled there as well. River District Park, that'll be opening hopefully later this month, if not first of next month. That'll be a big one for us. As far as the facilities go, the saving offices, we're trying to get that wrapped up hopefully before the end of this year. We're gonna have a lot of departments like HR that are gonna move and IT that are gonna move, and they have requests for the new offices that they're going to within here at City Hall. So filling those, and then and I guess that would be the main ones for us.
And this may be more of a Carly question, but you touched on it, Craig. So as more and more of the Elevate spawn projects begin coming into reality and generate huge facilities maintenance, landscaping, etc., there's 15% of that in O&M that's set aside within Elevate, correct?
So
So
Elevate.
we're not seeing any of that in this part, it's all.
So actually, you do kind of see it a little bit in this part. I will say, so let's do soup to nuts. Underneath Elevate, you will have a 15, actually it's a 20% set aside within Elevate for operations and maintenance. That stays in Elevate. A piece of that is now going to be set aside for these crews that you're talking about, like that will handle River District Park, that will handle the Northern River Walk. Those crews actually are in this salary line item on page 76. So part of that $3.1 million of salaries is going to be the Elevate Parks crew. So those people actually do sit here, and then Elevate does a transfer of those salary dollars to reimburse the general fund. That's seen as a transfer in, so like that offsetting amount, you'll see the salary dollar here. The inflow of the resource is through an interfund transfer.
Craig, I thought you were gonna say I keep you up because of the fountain.
No, sir, not yet.
Just give me time.
Is this what we call about fountains?
Yeah,
Yes.
but he got it, but it was done like before the sun came up.
Any other questions on construction facilities and grounds? So Carly, in putting together that estimate of 20% of Elevate funds for O&M,
Yes, sir.
could I assume that the work generated that shows up formed in here is completely covered by that?
Oh, yes, sir, absolutely, 100%. I mean, and you know, the
So as we add a new part, if we add Central River District Park,
mhm,
it's gonna generate lots of landscaping and maintenance, correct?
correct, I would imagine.
That is covered completely with a transfer out of Elevate.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, any other questions?
Yeah, so.
Mary, you're mouthing something. Is there anything you wanted us to know on this?
Well, I was asking Becky to look it up. I think operation maintenance is 15%, public safety is
Is
20%.
the-
Okay.
And that was gonna be my question, Carly, like what exactly is that transfer?
Sorry, that's
I
me.
didn't want to
that's me getting
disclose
those
that I'd missed the
confused.
5% raise.
Sorry.
No, that's tough being
Okay.
here. It's easy to sit here in the cheap seats. So.
What was it, what exactly is that transfer into this fund?
Okay,
from
so
Elevate?
you will see, we're gonna get down into the weeds and get fuzzy again. Hope that's okay. So stick with me. If you'll turn to page 249, which is the Elevate section. Oh, Mr. Busby doesn't want to stick with me. Get fuzzy. He doesn't want to get fuzzy. Okay, so this is starting on page 249 is the Elevate section of the book, okay? So within Elevate, you will see a set aside of, let's see, I'll point it to you specifically. On page 255, you'll see that administration section. Within that administration section, you'll see $215,000 set aside for utilities, $2.17 million that's set aside for an administrative contingency. If you flip a couple of pages to 258, under the transfers, you will see the transfer to the general fund for the operations and maintenance. It says, we might need to retitle this term. It says IPS O&M, but it really does need to be now construction facilities and grounds O&M. But you'll see that 437,574. Those are those park crews. Those are the salaries for the park crews and their benefits. On down, you will see another 20,000 that we transfer to the general fund for utilities. And then at the very, very bottom, you'll see 150,000 that we transfer to the facility renewal fund for the Saban Center offices that Mr. Thorpe was just mentioning. Those all come out of what we consider to be the Elevate operations and maintenance set aside. That is 15% and not 20. Sorry, I have to, if I don't say it, then I won't remember.
And that is not an actual reimbursement, that's just 15% gets transferred over, or do you go back and actualize that?
15% gets set aside.
Set aside.
And then what we do need to transfer, what is
Based on spent
actual.
or actual.
What is spent and what is actual is what will actually get transferred out of that set aside to the general fund.
So if
what-
there's more than that, the general fund eats it, right, for that, or if
No,
it's
sir.
less, that money stays in Elevate.
If it's,
What happens if it's more, if the expenses are more than 15%?
then Elevate will pay it.
Elevate will still pay it.
Yes, sir. Elevate pays actual.
Okay.
But it's, I mean, I would hope we would never present to
Never
you
happen.
a scenario like that. And in cases of the surpluses that we're generating, those dollars stay in that fund, that 15% fund, it carries over from year to year. It doesn't get swept into the general fund transfer. Because we realize this is a good opportunity, while we have very few of the Elevate facilities activated, to cash flow that and build up some substantial reserves.
Build a nest egg.
Yes, sir. And it's
Yeah.
part of the overall recommendation on the River District Fund. We won't bring those spreadsheets out because we'd like y'all to stay another 2 hours. We don't want you running off.
But that's actually a very good point. So the very large Elevate spreadsheets that we do always kind of throw out there, there is one that specifically is for operations and maintenance. It is that set aside and it will detail out, it will show these exact ones that I just mentioned to you that are coming out of the O&M set aside. We'll transfer them to the general fund, and then the rest of that just kind of like hangs out in
Kind of
Elevate.
stays in the bucket.
Yes,
in that
sir.
account.
And rolls from year to year.
That makes sense.
All right. Any other questions before we move on to city engineer? Office of the city engineer.
So this is one that is
What
part.
page are we on here?
Sorry, that will be page 111. So the Office of the City Engineer is part of the realignment, reorganization of the departments. However, the Office of the City Engineer has kind of always been its own thing, even within IPS. And so really what you see as fiscal 22 revised budget as compared to the fiscal 23 proposed budget, I really have I can't tell you extra moving pieces. It was what it was, and so it will be into the future.
All right.
So this one might be a little easier.
It looks considerably easier.
The city engineer is Miss Wendy Shelby, and so if you have any specific
Hey, Wendy, come on up for a
detailed
second.
questions, she would be the person.
Give us I think Carly's right, it's an easy one, relatively unchanged, 2.3% increase. Tell us what your section looks like in terms of personnel and resources.
Well, we have 27 employees in engineering. We currently have 17 in general fund, 5 in water and sewer. Then we have another 5 vacancies. Those 5 vacancies are also general fund. We're kind of split up into capital infrastructure projects, development, and then traffic. That's how engineering's kind of
Say
laid
that
out.
again, into-
Capital infrastructure projects, development, and then traffic.
And what would an example of development be?
That's our land development permits. That's
Oh.
development happening in the city. Mike Gardner is over that section of engineering. That's when the developers come in and they get their land development permit. And then we work with them to go through our standards and make sure they're, whatever they install for our infrastructure that we take over for maintenance is according to city standards.
And of your 5 vacancies, are those all engineers or are those a mix of engineers?
It's a mix. Well, we have a couple construction managers that's vacant. We have a civil engineer that's vacant, a special projects coordinator that's vacant, and I'm missing one, development manager.
Is that a
Well, then
rel-
that's a graduate engineer.
Is that a relatively new and passing vacancy gap, or is that something that's long-term and always there? That sounds like a dumb question, but for example, I can name a department where we have this many funded, but we can't seem to get past this many no matter what we do. What's the situation in engineering?
We've had some vacancies for some time, but we are working towards getting those filled. Now, we actually had interviews this morning for a vacancy. We put in a recommendation for another one, so we're starting to be able to get those vacancies filled now.
Have we funded all your vacancies
Yes, sir.
proposed?
Yeah, they're all vacancy. They're not any new proposed positions that I was just speaking of.
And office space wise, have y'all done any moving around?
We have not.
Okay. So, not going through some of the same tumultuousness that reorganization is implementing in other departments, what's your biggie for 23? What's big on your plate?
Well, I think for
What do you
engineering,
lay awake at night?
I think as far as engineering, I think we need to just figure out what projects are gonna stay in the engineering department. With the new department, and grounds facilities, construction facilities and grounds. I know they're gonna be getting some projects that may have prior years been ours, so we just need to settle on that. I think water and sewer may be getting some projects that we would have previously managed. That is where I think, once we can get that nailed down and figure out what projects engineering will continue to manage and maintain, and I think then we can get staffed up and make sure that I have the appropriate staff to do those things.
I've got to ask a question born out of complete ignorance. Traditionally, what has been the difference between what the Office of City Engineers handles and all the other things that are getting built, hammered, redeveloped, etc.?
I think the biggest change that our department has seen lately is vertical construction. With a lot of the Elevate projects, a lot of that's vertical construction, and the civil engineers that we have on staff, that's not our expertise. So I think that's the big difference from what we're seeing in our department.
But aren't, I mean, this is actually a carryover from a meeting we had earlier. There's Barnes Branch, the Event Center, the Saban Center. What other vertical pieces do we have going on?
So those are, I guess, like some of the main ones. You'll have the Barnes Branch, you'll have the Saban Center, you'll have the Possible Event Center. And then, of course, all of the current city vertical facilities that you'll have. Obviously, we have the City Hall complex, we'll have all of the Gateway, yes, sir, absolutely. You'll have all of the fire stations and police headquarters and things of that nature that all have to be maintained and improved as we go along. And that's part of the consideration as well that will go into construction facilities and grounds.
You will have, again, as the standard said, Fire Station 5, Fire Station 6, Benjamin Barnes Branch YMCA, Civil Rights Trail, on top of just normal operations in terms of not only general fund, but water and sewer, on top of the Elevate, which is Saban Center, Event Center, West
McDonald
River
Hughes,
Wall.
the new, piece for the McDonald Hughes Center, they're gonna be
Yeah,
ongoing.
Maccabee and those other things too coming, right?
Maccabee,
Maccabee
Bowers
Center.
Park, I mean, you've got a lot of,
Is,
we never had this much in one time, which is a growth problem, but it's certainly
is there anything in the budget for vertical construction personnel to hire? Wendy?
Not in
In,
the, not
in
in the
the,
engineering department.
not in your budget?
Construction managers, right?
Yeah, that's construction managers for our projects. That's for water, sewer, drainage, roadway. That's for construction manager for our infrastructure projects. Vertical construction, we don't have anything in the budget in our department.
That-
So one of the things that I'd like you to think about, and it's not, now's not the time or place because it needs to be, is so that the 7 council members clearly understand what your desire as the officer of the city engineer is in terms of what capabilities do we have. And I think once we become more clear on, these are the capabilities that we want to have, but just don't have yet, either because of vacancies and new hires, or, no, this is a set of capabilities where we've looked at it and we've consciously and deliberately decided it's not cost effective to maintain those capabilities on a full-time basis. We'll just go rent it when we need it. And that, over the near term, if that, as that congeals within a lot of these moving parts, I think that's something that would be very useful to us.
And I do think that, just from, especially from a financial management standpoint, when the construction facilities and grounds department does get, when we're completely rolling, I think that there will be that collaboration between OCE and then any type of vertical construction, because there's always going to be a part to play with our infrastructure side of things. And so, I think that, yes, you will see a much more collaborative activity with that in the future.
Okay?
Can I ask one
Yeah,
more question?
sure.
But based on how we're budgeting this, if there was going to be a vertical engineer, project type manager person, would it be in Wendy's budget? If there was someone
So if you,
at the city,
are you saying that if you were going to fund a position like an architect?
or if you were gonna,
Project manager.
or if you were gonna fund, I mean, cause I see here, there's a director of project management that's unfunded, but I mean, but I'm just saying, if you were gonna hire someone to do vertical construction management for the city, would that be in Wendy's budget?
No, sir, that would
Where
be
would it
in
be?
construction facilities and grounds.
Councilman Cry, those unfunded personnel requests that you're seeing
Mhm.
there, what page is that? I don't know.
113,
Those were prior to the new reorg. That was prior to, facilities, grounds,
Construction facilities and grounds.
construction facilities and grounds, that was prior to that department being created.
And Mr. Grove,
When I thought I was gonna have vertical construction and engineering.
I'd ask Mr. Moore and Ms. Kemp to correct me. Our goal was to take the existing budgeted personnel and move those into the facilities buildings and grounds, so that we would have that space available if we determine that's the best pathway to go forward, as we talked about at last Tuesday's projects meeting. Y'all, is that correct?
yeah, just process, Wendy, how, I mean, again, I know Carla hit on about the communication with everybody, but when something comes in project-wise, I guess a lot of times it used to come just city engineer, and now we're putting it in different places. How are y'all gonna manage that? Are y'all all gonna be meeting together and constantly communicating? I would assume that this,
I would
that this
anticipate-
That's what she
project,
said was
Yeah.
one of the.
yeah, that's a
big things on the
challenge.
plate for
Yeah,
'23.
I
Yes.
think the decision will have to be made, which department will get the
Goes.
project to manage the project.
And make sure it's in the right place.
Yes.
Yeah, that'll be, yeah, I can see that.
Will there be some where both of you?
I mean, I think there will be some overlay, and I mean,
Yeah.
most of the projects, have a little.
You
bit
have a
of thing
problem
in
with
them.
that, I mean.
No, we'll work through those.
Just remembering the department name.
I
still- I
still
still say
can't
LaPerry's
tell you.
department. I can never remember neighborhood or whatever it is.
I thought the city engineer would just be over everything.
What is it?
Okay, any
What
other
is it,
questions, Wendy? Jeff, you up? Airports?
Hands.
Airport is another one, just like the Office of the City Engineer, where it operated underneath infrastructure. So within the IPS structure, the infrastructure subsect that also had traffic, that also had streets and drainage, also had the airport. But because it was kind of kept as its own operating area, except for their personnel, we were able to pretty much take that cost structure and move it out into its own department. So obviously Jeff is the airport manager and can answer any detailed questions on that.
Good afternoon. I had a quick org chart kind of showing what our staffing looks like under the new reorg, what our employees' new classifications are. But you'll see the largest difference in our budget is largely due because of our transfer from IPS admin within infrastructure brought out to being under the airport. Part of our request is upgrading the classifications for our equipment operators to be airport maintenance specialists because they do more than just operate equipment, and also the addition of a full-time maintenance supervisor, and that's included in the budget before you. Outside that, a lot of our priorities for FY23 is capital improvements under the available grants that are out there. Over the past few months, you've seen the FAA grants that we've applied for. Equipment's our second priority in trying to right-size the equipment that's currently there, making sure that it's the appropriate equipment going to maintaining the airport. And that's probably the quickest summary of what our priorities are in the budget that we've got currently.
Jeff, this isn't budget, but all the great news we've been getting, concerning from Senator Shelby and others.
Yes, sir.
Can you in a nut tell me what we just got and what it's for? I mean, what you're gonna be able to do with that?
Yes, sir. That was a part of our normal FAA application that we do in the fall around September. We're going to be doing it again later this month. So every year we submit a 5-year list of projects of what's important to the airport. In September of last year, we said the terminal ramp is the critical project we want considered by the FAA. So we work with the airport district's office. It goes up to headquarters and gets reviewed against all other airports. And that was the project that was designated under the normal airport improvement program. So that grant, which is actually one of 2 installments, the second installment will come on the 13th of this month to be around a $5 million plus project where the city only has to pay 5% of that. It's also a partnership with ALDOT that does the other 5%, and the rest of the 90% is a federal share. So what you'll see on the airport is a replacement of the terminal ramp, which handles all of our large aircraft charters, the university athletics, the large cargo comes in the airport. That's the only ramp that's built to handle large weights. So we got a lot of pavement at the airport, but that's the only one ramp that's truly designed. So we want to make sure that it's ready to go for the next 30 years.
And that's the second part of last year, right? Last September?
This is a brand new grant.
Is it a brand new grant?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's the FY22 grant.
But Shelby announced something about the runway, wasn't it?
There's some efforts to work on the runway extension that our Congress members are working with us on. That's for FY23.
Well, it just seems so much good news, though, and just somebody just comes off the street and says, what is that gonna be able to do for the airport?
Yeah, the extension is really in support of Mercedes and trying to expand their cargo operations. And we want to make sure that we're ready to go when that day comes. We always have to kind of look a few years out.
Right.
So international cargo is where they're trying to place their efforts with the electric vehicles and the suppliers that they're having to do more so than their combustible engine models. So we're looking at even Mexico and further to try to accommodate the additional aircraft. And the extension is one of those needs as well as economic development projects. Some of the things that we've been considering in the past, one of the gigs on the airport is the runway's not long enough. So it's a great problem to have, and we're really glad for the support we're getting, but that's the type of projects that we're working on currently.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
So Jeff, are you proposing to build an entire maintenance section just for airport?
No, sir, that's currently what we have. We have 3 maintenance specialists that are currently categorized as airport equipment or equipment operator seniors. They do more than just do equipment, but they want to be the first level of maintenance, that anything maintenance on the airport, they're their go-to. If it's something above and beyond our capabilities, we rely on facility maintenance or whatever department that may be, that has traditionally supported the airport. We are supported by legal, finance, TDOT, infrastructure, facility maintenance. They've always been there, but we're trying to build a crew that we take the first hack at it, and then we rely on third parties if we can handle it in-house. We have one vacancy currently that we were looking to fill upon approval that position get upgraded.
Which one is that?
It's the airport maintenance specialist.
One special. Again, a question out of ignorance. So we generate enough maintenance out there, exclusively airport related, for a 3-man and supervisor section?
Absolutely. We have 724 acres, so from about April through October, just mowing the airfield takes up all of our equipment or our employees, with, 2 20-foot bush hogs, a little bit of rain, one piece of equipment breaking down. It takes a lot to stay on top of that. And that's not just a cosmetic thing. If your grass is too tall, you can't see lights, you can't see signs.
So when I see maintenance, it is the kind of things you're describing. It's not patching and smoothing cracks in the runway, or is it?
We have to be very careful of FOD out there as well. This is not your average right-of-way crew. Because if they make a mistake, it could get into an engine or create other issues on runway. Be very, very careful.
Yes, sir. They have to be able to train to operate their equipment while talking to air traffic control, while also staying clear of aircraft. We have game day events. They're operating shuttles and taking passengers from planes to the terminal. If we have escorts, because not anybody can just drive out on the airfield. So right now we have a herbicide treatment crew. EDCO is spraying the airport to help slow the growth of grass. Our crews are escorting them right now, so it doesn't take a lot to need three to 5 people to be running a normal day of operations at the airport.
Any other questions?
Just a comment, I was impressed with your meeting in the chamber last week.
Thank you for attending.
I'm excited about that.
A lot of good feedback, and look forward to bringing some follow-ups from that meeting.
All right, thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Water and sewer.
So the one thing about water and sewer is that it has its own fund. And so the subsection for water and sewer will start on the water and sewer fund tab. It's on page 185. The water and sewer fund also has certain pieces of it that are not just the water and sewer department, but that will be accounting and finance has a piece. That's what I mentioned, I think, last week during our budget hearing, is for audit fees that we allocate out to the water and sewer fund. Information technology has its own subsect. That's for maintenance contracts that they have that are water and sewer specific. Also, the city attorney has a claims and judgment section that is obviously for any claims that are made for water and sewer activity and operations. And then, as Ms. Shelby just mentioned, also the city engineer has a section within the water and sewer fund also.
Okay.
But then the rest of that is going to be the water and sewer department.
And who will be?
The one that's currently
running
acting
it?
over that is Kimberly Michaels.
Okay. Hey, Kimberly, come on up.
You want to say who's in charge?
Hey, Kimberly.
No, you're missing your. Good for you.
So Kimberly, what is, how has the ongoing reorganization impacted you? And then what's the biggest thing on your plate for 23?
Well, Ron Smith and I have been working on the reorg together and trying to get our organizational chart complete and how we feel like things need to be put back together. So we've spent a lot of time on that from a budget standpoint, from changing positions. You had things within IPS that were very kind of segregated or siloed, and so we're trying to put a lot of those back together and figure out which positions are kind of duplicated that we don't need anymore, we do need, those kind of things. So we've spent a lot of time on that part of it, but I would say the thing that keeps us up at night probably would be the amount of managers that are upper level supervisors that are vacant. So, but that's not part of, that has nothing to do with the reorg, that just has to do with struggling to find the right people that we need for some of those positions and that kind of thing. So, you've heard us talk about the wastewater facility a lot. With the lack of positions there, we are finally on the upswing for that, but again, we're missing some of the upper level people that are related to the plants there. And so Ethan Hicks has been filling in a lot from the water side at the wastewater side almost exclusively, trying to get that moving along, and so we've made a lot of progress there. And then on the linear side, you know, there's a lot of things with, on the collections, we're missing the collection supervisor, which has been vacant since March. It's been posted multiple times and just haven't quite found the right match yet. And then, the meter supervisor is also vacant, and that has recently been posted. So, I don't think we've been interviewed yet on that. Interviewed yet for that position, Bob?
No, we haven't interviewed yet. The meter position, it's been posted, we've received applications, and we're in the review process. We haven't completed the review applications to try to set up interviews for that one position yet. On the collections manager, we've received applications a couple of times. We've actually interviewed one time, and we're trying to set up interviews a second time for trying to find the right fit, as you said.
I would imagine, especially after touring of the wall, spending time with you and Ron, Kevin, that's difficult. I mean, because it's so skilled. It's not like you can just hire, help wanted, and you can hire somebody. That's got to be quite a challenge.
It's almost like you're almost having to pull them from another facility, is what a lot of it is. Or trying to get somebody that's retiring from a facility that's not on our same retirement system.
Oh.
So, and that's helped with, we have a guy right now that's the situation, and it's helped a lot at wastewater, and he's getting ready to retire. And so he's been working part-time with us filling in, and he'll ultimately be full-time with us by the end of the calendar year.
And then I imagine the employees you have now too, there are some that will be ready, but not ready to, I guess, move up at this time, possibly too.
Yeah, so we have, for instance, on the maintenance side of the wastewater facility, we have a lot of younger maintenance techs there. And so, if you remember, I guess it was towards the end of last summer, we had the progression plan for people to advance.
Yes.
Well, and we have some vacancies there, but we're kind of holding out on a little bit of those to give the people that are there an opportunity to advance instead of hiring somebody off the street, because our whole plan was to try to promote people from within. So there's a couple positions that we've been trying to hold open in hopes that some of the people we have now will be ready to be promoted. We don't want to take those opportunities away from them if we can keep managing.
That's wonderful that you can do that.
So, but from a water and sewer department perspective, based on the pieces that we still feel like we're going to have a number of employees, we feel like that we will end up with 191 water and sewer employees that are in water and sewer, and then plus the 5 that Wendy has. And then currently, of those 191, there are 31 vacancies, so it's about 16%. But we still feel like we're making ends meet and doing all the things. We don't feel like we're missing opportunities right now to get work done, but we're still definitely having a lot of people doing a lot more work than 40 hours a week and that kind of thing.
Yes,
But
good
we're-
gracious. That's a lot of pressure.
So with the water and sewer department, I guess the biggest thing that, one of the things we wanted to talk about is the structure. You've talked about the different departments and how they're gonna be broken down. So on the water and sewer side, we'll have like a logistics side of it that'll be your GIS, your mapping, that'll help with any corrections when you have new meters and stuff put in that keeps all of our data updated. And then you have the process side, which will be the treatment plants and the lakes, and then the linear side, which is gonna be meters, collections, and distribution. Then you have the business office, which previously it was the customer service side, and now it also will include the billing that was sitting in accounting and finance. And then we'll have the capital project side as well, the water and sewer capital projects.
Kimberly, the meter expense that's in here, is that more upgrades and replacing some of those meters, or is that just
Should be.
normal? yeah, addition of the plan that we've had in place to try to upgrade a lot of those meters, is that partly
Yes.
what that is?
So in the operations budget every year, there's an amount that's put in there for replacing meters, repairing meters, that kind of thing.
Or upgrading,
Yes.
upgrading them?
Yes, sir. And so, this year, with this year's budget, we didn't spend as much of that as we wanted to due to lack of personnel issues. You know, we have 6 meter reader vacancies.
Yeah, we're down by the, like I said, the meter manager, and currently we're 6 meter readers. We're missing 6 meter readers, which now we do, other than speaking to the 18% or 16% that she said earlier that we have vacancy across the department, we've probably got 60% of that with recommendations turned in, so we're working through that process of getting those people back in the board. But currently, until we get through that process with HR, we've got 6 meter readers and 1 meter manager vacant right now, which impacts our ability to do our AMI initiatives, where a lot of that money was coming from or going to. And one of the other issues is we didn't have good bids. If you guys remember, we bid a project and we had 1 bidder on the project, and we rejected all the bids because it was just it's not a good bid process.
So, but that's what is part of that. And so with the 2022B bond, we will be doing a lot of the meter change out stuff with the AMI project as well. And so, hopefully by the end of January, y'all will see a plan. We're actually gonna roll out how we're going to go through with AMI and, which will also impact some of these funds and that kind of thing, that you'll see all of that, and everybody will have a better idea, understanding of how all this plans to be rolled out in the future.
All right.
I'm curious, Carly, with the revenue increases and the things that we've done, and hopefully I know our usage was a little bit better this summer because it was dry. That, when I look at it, and I see the expenditures, I think that's the normal, if I remember from last year. We talked about this earlier, I think. There's $9 million of depreciation, right, on the
Yes, sir.
system. So usually your revenues, and you're gonna spend more money than your revenues. Is that a product of that, or is that, because I mean, we're about $4 million or 3.5-ish
So two,
more expenditures than revenue.
so yeah,
In the budget.
yes, sir. So you're gonna, there's 2 items that we budget that are generally looked at as possibly like not necessarily a budgetary item. One of those, yes, is depreciation, which is a non-cash expense. It does not, it's not an expenditure, it's an expense, purely non-cash. Another thing that we budget that is purely a balance sheet transaction is
Can I
debt
say
service. Sure.
one more thing for anyone? I don't know if we're being recorded. The other thing that's important with that is when you're looking at the actual position of the company, you add back that $9 million. So, I mean, I know that from years of experience with EBITDA and all that other stuff.
Yes, sir.
So technically, you're $9 million better off than what this looks like. Is that how you look at this?
Yes, that is one way to look at it. I think that,
Because all I ever read is we don't have any money, and we've spent all our money in water and sewer and transferred it to here and there and everywhere. But
Yes,
we're
sir.
actually $9 million better off than what this budget shows.
yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
Just
sir.
making sure I'm
As
not
far as
confused. I am
day-to-day
confused.
activity, yes, sir, that's
But
absolutely.
not about
accurate.
that, I don't think, am I?
No, that,
That's
the,
EBITDA. That's, well, we'll talk about EBITDA later, Kip.
so that, yes, the $9 million of depreciation is a non-cash expense.
Right.
That is not something that actually flows out of us
That's
or
right.
out of our revenues at any point in time.
That's right.
That is purely an accounting expense that we have to disclose on our financial statements.
And
If
And that's
we will bring.
based on our assets and the life of our assets that
Yes,
you
sir.
write them off over time. That has nothing to do with what we're collecting.
We are
in
we are
water and sewer.
projecting to bill out to bill out to the customers for usage of water and sewer. We're expecting to bill out $61 million ish.
You're taking an expense that does not affect the operations of that business.
It's a
Because,
final write-down.
correct, it is a write-down of your assets that you have to do over the life of those assets. Or some of these things that we're doing, these big projects, we capitalize them with what we're spending at plot or whatever, where you're gonna depreciate that, but that has no real effect. I mean, it does, yes, but that doesn't affect the pot of revenue that you have because that's a non-cash expenditure. Am I
Absolutely.
saying that right, correct?
Absolutely,
Carly, I
yes,
mean, 'cause
sir.
I'm sorry to
The
interrupt, that's just what.
EBITDA that he's referring to is just, if you put that back in so that you're looking at it from a reality of cash in, cash out.
Right.
Real money in, real money out.
That's-
And that
that's
shows
what I
you
was
the
asking.
real health
I
of, the water and sewer fund.
And if anybody,
You have
and
to
again,
take
if you
that
wanna
into
get back
account.
down into like the accounting weeds, I would suggest that anybody that's interested in that, we do publish a cash flow statement for our water and sewer fund that you can go out and see how much our cash flow, actual cash flow of what we pull in versus what we expend out will show you. And the cash flow from operations has never, ever been negative in the history of the city.
Even during bad times.
Even during bad times.
So, the part of that ramble, sorry, is, I mean, I think that's a good point for the council to know. And I think, personally, Walt, we need to continue to say that, because that's a big deal. But the point, if you're spending 3.5 million, I'm just writing this down, 3.5 million, if that works out that way, over what this budget is,
Mhm.
right? So if you take the 9 minus that's 5.5,
Yes,
roughly.
sir.
So we
Roughly.
should have, you've got to keep reserves, I get all that, I don't remember, what is the reserve of that?
It's 30% of our operating expenditures.
Which would be 30% of the 64 million?
Roughly, let's just say roughly for Mr. Busley's order of magnitude, yes, sir, well, let's do it that way.
All right, anyway. But the difference in that money, we could reinvest back in our water and sewer.
And that's what we use for reinvestment.
Right.
Yes,
And-
sir.
But we should have more to reinvest this year than we did in the last budget. We should.
Gosh, I hope so, yeah.
Yeah, but we should. I
We
mean,
absolutely should. We
Considering, I mean, but anyway, but I'm saying in this last budget, I know the stuff, the moves that we made were to improve the health of this. So hopefully we have more money in that pot, so to spend on current things as we go, but I guess the point of that ramble is, are we putting that money to work in this budget?
Yes, sir. The difference that you're talking about, that extra 3.5 million that
Yes.
is kind of, that is what we're putting to work within the water and sewer operational budget.
Okay. But hopefully we're gonna end up having more money we can put to work, if the budget holds true, correct?
Correct. So that 3.5 million is what we're putting to work in the operational side of things. The rest of it should be what we're putting to work in the infrastructure and capital part of it.
But that doesn't happen until we get actuals and have an audit.
That's correct.
Okay. Sorry thank you for
No,
indulging my
And-
rambling on that. I just think that's important, because I get questions about that all the time.
I truly, if anybody is interested in the health, in the operating health of the water and sewer fund, I really would suggest going and looking at the cash flow statement that we publish every year. That cash flow statement will show at the very, very top, it will show cash flow from operations. It will show the cash that we, not even just the billing revenue side, but the cash that we bring in versus the cash that we expend out purely for operations has always been positive, significantly so.
And you also expect to be back to a normal write-off of accounts too.
Well, so
We hope.
I'll put it this way. So last year, the write-off was fairly normal. I would say that because Mr. Brewer has done such an amazing job over this last entire fiscal year, I am very hopeful that this upcoming budget cycle, or this upcoming fiscal year end, will show that our write-off is again within normal range.
Which is
I was
usually-
really
Which
significant.
is usually what?
About 350,000.
300
Okay.
But isn't it possible that our write-off situation gets better this year? Didn't we just get briefed a month ago about 450,000 available from the state that they're trying very hard to put out in the community to pay delinquent bills?
It's.
Who was that
hopefully,
briefed us?
But, again, if 300 plus is the average, I tend to think that's probably where we'll eventually fall. There's been a great deal of help that's been out there to consumers, regardless of the utility, that there's still those individuals who don't take advantage of. So I think for now, that we'll probably, hit around that 300,000 mark. Of course, we won't know as we close the books and get the audit. will ultimately tell the tale. I would say this, though, echo your remarks, Mr. Crowe, which I do appreciate. You know, ever since I joined the city in 2001, all I've heard is how the city's demise was imminent, whether it was days, weeks, months, or years. And year after year, review after review, credit review after credit review, through a tornado, through a great recession, through COVID, here we are, still strong. And then at the end of the day, you can keep predicting the sky is going to fall, but the facts point in a much different direction. And it's been very good stewardship that started. I'll give Jerry Plott and Al DuPont started it. It's been a tradition that continues. And I want to commend you, the fact that you're in here asking questions. I don't know of anybody in Tuscaloosa County that takes this much time to go in this much detail to review the taxpayers' money.
You know, Mr. Mayor, to compliment or back up what you just said too, I think that the transfer issue has to be based on solid logic or actual expenditures based on percentage of time that people spend in that, because if you hired them, you would be paying something comparable to that in that company, because I think you have to look at this as a company. And I really believe, based on conversations we've all had for years, I don't really know that the council viewed it that way with the administration. I don't know, because this is should be a standalone business.
Yes, sir.
That we're looking to make decisions and reinvest the money in the right places. And I think we're making progress, but there's no doubt we need to spend more money on water and sewer. I think everybody in here would say that today. I mean, but I think the demise of the water and sewer fund is very overhyped, in my opinion, based on where we are. That's this councilman's opinion. And so,
And I will, so one thing that I will point out just from a financial accounting standpoint is that the 10-year plan that we were kind of approved to do for the 5-year, like beginning short-term period last year absolutely was necessary. But I think that since we have implemented that, even in just this first year, budgeting in for the second year, being able to project, I think that the water and sewer fund is on that trajectory, will be very stable into the future and be able to do like reinvestment as we have talked about through those large projects and even some smaller ones as well.
can I ask one more question? I'll shut up, and I promise. Do we normally budget? Does the budget, and I don't have last year's in front of me, but when you're budgeting these revenues and expenses, are we usually always about $3 million or $4 million over with expenditures? I mean, we're usually spending more, right, than the revenue, right? Is that traditional?
Yes, historically, we have tried to keep that over budget within about a $3.5 million picture. So yes, sir, that is about where we would like to keep it.
Okay, I'm sorry
No, it's all right.
to go down that trail, but
Well, one
I
thing
wanted to understand that better.
just especially for the write-off, I would like to say, so I just kind of did some quick math, is that we only write off 0.5% of our total revenues that we bring in. I would say industry standard, that's actually pretty exceptional. Normally write-offs are about a 3 to like, maybe a little bit 2.5 to 3% normally in a write-off scenario, and we only do 0.5% every year.
For a business, that is extraordinary. I wish ours or mine was 1/10 of 1%.
Truly that is to Mr. Brewer's, his customer service interaction, and getting the revenue type, but then also having the conversations with the customer about what the bill is. That is very, very helpful in that regard.
Mr. Crowe, and truly to the council, I do appreciate you bringing this up, because you look around this room, you have so many talented and exceptional people that have decided to dedicate their life to public service. And I know there's a few people in our community that enjoy taking shots or being vindictive, or enjoys trying to compromise the integrity of the people that we work with every day. But we are damn lucky to have these people, and they do an exceptional job. And I appreciate you as a council noting that, because we as elected officials, we signed up for it. And so the criticism is absolutely fair. The people in this room, they work hard because they love this community like we do. And I appreciate you guys recognizing them. You don't know how much it actually means to me, just because I work with these, I can't imagine these individuals every day. I can't imagine what it means to them, and I just appreciate you noting that. It means more than you know.
It's true.
You're welcome.
Okay, do we want to transition right into rate increase review?
Yes, sir, we can.
Water rate increase.
So there's not gonna be anything specifically in your book on this. We can talk about the water and sewer 10-year plan, as it was enacted last year. If you will recall, it was a 6% base. So 6% was to go towards the, financing of the water and sewer 10-year plan, so the capital piece of that to pay off debt service that we would take out to be able to do those projects. And then there would be a COLA attached to that as well. That COLA should go to fund the increases in the operational side of things. So to be able to pay for COLAs for our employees that are working there, to be able to pay for any cost increases on things like water chemicals, on any outside services contracts, things of that nature. So the 10-year plan rate increase we enacted it for 5 years last year. That was going to be the 6% base and then the COLA on top of that. This last year, the COLA was 5.1%.
And what do we link that to?
Per code, we use.
Because there was some discussion about what the correct index most appropriate for that type of escalation was.
So per code, we use LaShawn, what's it called? Is it the Southeastern?
Bureau of Labor Statistics, CPI.
Thank you. The Labor Statistics CPI for the Southeastern region. That's what we link it to. And so this last year, we always take the one that's published in January of the year to be able to project and factor and budget into the next fiscal year. And so this last January, that was 5.1%. If you were to take on that 5.1% COLA plus the 6% of the base for the water and sewer rate increase that was enacted last year, that would be 11.1% of a rate increase to citizens. Within this budget, only 10% is being proposed. That would be 6% base for the 10-year water and sewer plan because that is absolutely necessary for infrastructure investment. And then our COLA on top of that, we're only going to request the 4% for the rate increase. However, that will not diminish what we are projecting out for budgetary. Employees will still get the full COLA that's awarded to all city employees. We're just doing that on the rate increase. Are there any questions on that? I just wanted to make that very clear. That if we were to operate per code as it sits now for the rate increase, it would be 11.1%. What's proposed in this budget is only 10%.
So in improving the budget, council would be providing the nod to lower by 1 point what's already programmed in there.
Yes, sir, that's correct. And we will present a resolution stating that.
Just to make sure.
Why is that again?
Go ahead, Kim.
I'm sorry. You're saying, why is that again?
Why do we only do 10%?
Yeah.
For understanding that the citizens are being, asked that an 11.1% rate increase might be overtaxing for a lot of citizens that are out there. And so we're trying to make the balance between knowing what the citizens are going through versus what we do feel that the need to maintain good, clean water distribution and treatment really costs.
It's an arbitrary number. I mean, I won't sit here and tell you there was a methodology to it. We just felt at the 10%, that was a cap that we could achieve all the goals within the budget. And knowing that we may have to make that up in the coming years, we're also looking over the horizon. If you look at the index number now, it's at 8% for next year. And so we're staring, high inflationary impact, which again, water and sewer is a business and we have to charge what it costs us, but you look over the horizon, that cost is coming. So we understand that we're gonna be facing the same situation again. So trying to govern it down as much as possible while ensuring we have the revenue available to continue to run at a high standard our utility was the goal. But I don't want to try to convince you we created this magical methodology that can support it. We just felt that was the right number.
And I tell you, when you think back on all the years that I've been here, how many awards the department has run, and talking about great people, well, we got the best. And when you look at, I used to hate to leave, to go out of town because I missed our water. Our water is so good.
Let's go to Jackson, Mississippi for a
And
week.
look at Jackson, Mississippi, and God bless those people and what they're going through. Anyway, that's just another something that the city of Tuscaloosa does better than anybody else.
All right, any other questions or comments on the rate increase?
So within that one, I think there's also the garbage, rate, if you wanted to discuss that one as well.
Yes, please.
If,
Thank you, Seth.
what Becky's about to pass out is basically an analysis that we do for our environmental services fee, and the cost that cost center will generate throughout the year, and then also a look back over prior years. The summary that you'll kind of see at the bottom basically just shows that I guess normally,
Carly, would you mind walking through how Elevate plays a role?
yes, sir. Okay, so yes, excellent point, Mayor. So we'll start at the top. The revenue sources for our environmental services operations, obviously we charge citizens an amount on their water bill for garbage pickup. So that amount we'll just look at fiscal '22. So that amount for fiscal '22 was 1.379 million. If you'll look back at 2019, that amount was 6.18 million. 2019 is pre-Elevate. And so when we were putting Elevate into action, one of the things that we recognized was that an increase in sales tax charge to a citizen would possibly be, more money out of their pocket. And knowing that this was going to be an issue for their general household income, we tried to come up with an offset. Within the Elevate procedure, the offset that we were trying to do would not have worked through the state legislature, and so the one thing that we could control was this amount that we charge citizens on garbage rates. And so what we decided to do was discount the amount that we charged them for garbage and trash pickup to be able to hopefully offset that increase in the sales tax dollars that they were going to be charged as they went out and bought things like groceries.
May I add to the point, the number too was, again, this number was not arbitrary. If we looked at the IRS tax tables, we looked at the median income within Tuscaloosa, the average household would feel a roughly $200 impact if you increased your sales tax by 1%. Now certainly, if you're on different stratas of the income sphere, that number is gonna be different. That number was around $200, $250. So we could reduce the garbage subsidy. If you injected $5 million, that would reduce $18 a month. 18 times 12 is $216, I think, off the top of my head. So that's how we developed that number as the offset, since we could not garner legislative support to eliminate the grocery tax, the local sales tax on groceries in the city of Tuscaloosa. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, absolutely. He's absolutely accurate. And then, so like Mayor just mentioned, we try to take that sweet spot of, I believe it was $18. And then knowing that Elevate would still be getting that money in, since we're not discounting the sales tax. So Elevate would get that money in, and then we would use that as the subsidy to push over to the general fund to be able to make up the amount of garbage revenues that we were now not charging to citizens. So that is that $5 million Elevate Tuscaloosa subsidy line item that you will see in that revenue section at the top. Are there any questions on that specific part? That $5 million has carried over year to year, so Elevate continues to subsidize that amount, again, knowing that citizens are paying that extra sales tax dollar into the Elevate fund, us wanting to then discount that as much as possible, we discounted the garbage rate over in the general fund. So therefore, the Elevate fund will then transfer that $5 million into the Elevate to try and make up that amount. So as you can tell, if you'll, let's just do a general look back of like 2019, 2020. At the very, very bottom, you'll see the shortfall line.
Hey, Carly, can I ask a
Sure.
question?
Yes, sir.
I can interrupt you, but it looks to me like even before the $5 million subsidy, have we always lost money in the garbage
Yes, sir.
department?
We always have.
And why was that?
The general fund has always subsidized garbage pickup forever and ever, amen. So garbage is not treated like water and sewer is as an operating business. It was looked at as a service that was provided to our citizenry.
Sherry one time explained to me it was our give back of a tax cut the city could do. So it was around, I think, $6 or7 a month. If you-
Oh, yes, sir.
If you broke that out, it averaged, it gave you about a $6 or $7 a month discount pre-Elevate.
So, if you'll look at prior years, you'll see that we averaged, between, like $1.1 million and then $1.89 million. That was the general shortfall that we kept on the books, 2017, even to 2021. You'll see in 2022, that shortfall amount jumped to 3.1 million. And then in 2023, if we did not do a rate increase, we'd still be seeing that $3.1 million shortfall. I will say from a financial standpoint that is slightly unsustainable. The average of the $1 million to $1.8 million is really that sweet spot that we would rather stay in. Knowing that we can't necessarily get back to that this year because, again, that would be increasing the garbage rate so much. That would be a little bit overburdensome maybe to the citizenry. We are proposing a $2 rate increase for the garbage charges to the citizens. If you will look at the column in green and then this kind of column in a little bit orange color, you will see 2023 without the rate increase, we would lose 3.1 million. With the rate increase, we only lose about 2.5 million.
So when the average citizen gets his bill,
Yes, sir.
he's gonna see how many dollars a month more or less increase on his water bill? And then how many on the garbage bill?
650, I just pulled up that chart, that's how, I just had that chart in front of me. I think it was $658 on water would be the average bill, and $2 per month on environmental services. So $858, so $9 a month.
Okay.
Would roughly be it. Let me double check the number from the,
And that's what most people are just gonna see, that $9. They're not gonna break it down.
yeah, but, and it's that's exactly what they're gonna say.
Yeah.
So y'all may beat me to it. Here it is, yeah. It's $638 on water and sewer, and $2 on residential garbage, so $838.
Okay. Better than Comcast going up.
Better than, and again, we don't have to make a profit, whereas
Yeah.
they have to make that for shareholder.
If there's any other questions about how we came to that amount, please let me know, but this is really kind of like the breakdown of all the revenues, all of the expenditures, both operational and capital for the Environmental Services Department to operate, and then how we came up with the amount requested.
Carla, would you mention the box down at the bottom that you put together?
Yes, sir. So, as of budget time, the total residential garbage customers, we had about 26,500. The total business customers, these are active customers, by the way. The total business customers we had was about 884. And so if you raised $1 each, $1 a month on each of those customer bases, that would come to about $328,600 per month. So in order to get rid of in order to get rid of the shortfall completely, if we were to charge it like we are trying to charge for the water and sewer fund, where we just break even, we would need to increase $9.51 a month to the customers.
But that includes the Elevate subsidy.
That does include the Elevate subsidy, yes, sir.
So another $3 on top of what we're doing.
No, sir, $9.51 on top of what we're doing.
Oh, okay.
So if you did that, and I'm not saying that's gonna happen, just to make certain I understand it correctly. By the way, thank you for this. Your bill would be $12 or $13 a month instead of,
Yes, sir.
okay, because the rest would be covered by Elevate.
Yes, sir. Correct.
Okay.
Yes, if we were to take away the Elevate subsidy amount, that would be a $25, we're talking a $25 a month increase, for each citizen on each cart. That is a per cart charge as well.
I would, not to be resolved here in the budget hearing, but just as a seed to plant, I would hope that we would examine the feasibility of coupling a base garbage charge with a surcharge for extra garbage. If you walk through my district on a Monday morning, it makes the other districts pale in comparison to what's being every Monday morning my heart sinks when I go out there, and Monday afternoon when I see what our guys have done, I'm amazed.
Yeah.
But I can promise you, it is an inordinate amount of work being expended over there in compared to probably the other districts, so.
Parts of my district.
Parts of yours,
Yeah,
parts of
please,
Matthews,
yeah.
so, yeah, let's forget about it, but
Students.
there is a blast area, a burst radius, where I can show you picture after picture after picture after picture. And it's not just a one-time, it is a recurrence. So, just as a seed to plant, if we can ever, I know we've got cameras on garbage trucks now, but if there's a seed to plant, that coupling in the same way that on our base rate, we've for water, I think we've got a base rate increase, and then we've done a COLA adjustment. If we could couple a base garbage rate with a surcharge for extra work and attention, it's a significant amount.
I would love to have that conversation with you, and certainly once Selvin and his team get staffed up, because one of the ideas that Stacy Vaughn and I had talked about a year ago or so was maybe you offer or require an extra pickup in these certain, quote, hot zones of garbage. And in that extra pickup is the full garbage rate, because you would have to have your full crews out there, and maybe that would decrease the amount of garbage, because what our teams are running into out there, it's unbelievable what they do. And in fact, I got compliments this morning about how clean Sunday morning the areas were, which I'm very proud of our team members. But there's areas of the city that, quite frankly, are getting a lot more service for a lot less price.
For the same price.
For the same price. And so I'd be open to looking at that with you, and what's the fair and equitable way.
Sure, and I think Selvin and Jennifer and the EST folks, I think they can tell us. I don't know, that's my layman's look, but I think they can tell us in a heartbeat, we're spending 3 times as much effort cleaning up these areas as anywhere else.
Well,
I
And
think
they
that
should
needs
pay
to be
for it.
addressed.
Well, and you've got the areas and you don't want people in Virginia Circle or Woodland Hills to have to pick up that cost.
Or University Circle,
Yeah.
University Circle's a normal run takes care of it. So
I'd
don't wanna
love to
beat up
sit
the
down
other.
and talk with the council
But,
and
but
get the ideas.
if the amount of subsidization we're doing is jumping from $1 million to $3 million, 3.25, and it's unsustainable, and rate increases are part of the solution, that's great, but I just want to plant the seed. I think they can be part of the solution, and there's a way to round it out and make it really equitable to everybody.
Well, the rate curve is a little bit steeper because in 21 and 22, we didn't recommend. In 21 was COVID, really the COVID budget year. In 22, being the first year of implementation of the 10-year water and sewer plan, we didn't want to stack up. We certainly, if you could go back and take your crystal ball, you would have realized that inflation was we didn't realize the inflationary pressures were going to come to bear, which is why you see that steep 951. 951. So the $2 gets you there, certainly, and more you add, the less you shrink that down, you free up money in the general fund.
All right, you have garbage rate, subsidy, direct cost analysis, water and sewer.
We have gone over that when we were doing the water and sewer fund, but I'm willing to go into any detail about how we come up with that amount, if you would like.
I'm good.
I'm good.
Yep.
Okay, let's take a 12-minute break and be back in here at 3:45. We are behind, but it's worth it. Don't have a gavel. Bam!
Coach Maddox.